seconds. 29.
28 seconds.
27.
26.
25 seconds.
24. 23.
22 seconds.
21 seconds.
22 seconds.
19.
18.
17 seconds.
16.
15 seconds.
14.
13 seconds.
12.
11.
10 seconds. 9.
8.
7.
6.
6 what?
Copy.
5 seconds.
3. 2. 1.
Hi folks, and welcome back to the Scotch Tacker. Today we'll be discussing the Star Trek Lower Decks episodes, the two most recent ones that have aired, called We'll Always Have Tom Paris, and what's the other one called?
Mugato Gumato.
Gumato.
Yeah, you or any however you want to pronounce it, right?
It's interpretive.
Yeah.
Today joining me is Gary and Scott. Thank you very much for coming on the show today.
Glad to be here.
So, yeah, like, what did you think? Like, initial thoughts of We'll Always Have Tom Paris. Do you want to start, Gary?
We'll Always Have Tom Paris has what to me at least were the two funniest moments I have ever seen in Star Trek, for my own personal take. Although it's been a long time since I first saw The Voyage Home, so there might be some contenders in there that I'd forgotten. And I found that the third episode Will Always Have Tom Paris, I think, is the strongest of this season so far, and possibly the second strongest of the show so far. Mugato Gumato had some wonderful strengths to it. I don't think it'll become one of my favorites, but I loved very much of it. And from what I'm seeing online, I'm kind of the opposite reaction to most from both of those, which I'm finding interesting. I'm looking forward to this conversation.
And Scott?
I mean, as far as We'll Always Have Tom Paris goes, that was... Comparing the two, that was like the episode where the main storyline was the one that I actually enjoyed more than the secondary one. But it was actually flipped for Mugato Gumato. To get a little bit of detail, like the main storyline of Mugato Gumato is a trope that I've seen so many times, and I'm just totally jaded with it. When you have like established characters who know each other, and then somebody comes in and says, "Oh, you didn't know this about this person?" They're like, "What? Oh, what are you talking about?" And then there's these little coincidences that happen. Like, wait a minute, were they right? And it all turns out to be a big misunderstanding. Like, I've seen that in sitcoms since I was a kid, so it brought me down a little bit on the episode. But we were actually talking about the first one. Yeah, the main storyline of We'll Always Have Tom Paris, I love that they actually... It was like the writers realized, oh, wait a minute, we spent the whole first season doing certain pairs. We better mix this up. And really digging into it when you get into how like Tendi and Mariner don't even seem to really know each other, despite the fact that they've been serving together. Tendi said, for the past year on the ship. And somehow Mariner didn't even know that Tendi has a first name. And Tendi didn't know that Mariner's been on like 5 ships. Of course, she wasn't there when Mariner said that to Boimler in the pilot, so... But you'd think she would have picked it up somewhere along the way. But with the two of them getting to know each other was a great part of that episode. And Boimler crawling through the guts of the ship because he's a major Tom Paris fanboy. You gotta love that.
And one of the links between these two episodes, which was the tertiary plot in the previous We'll Always Have Tom Paris, of learning more and more that the Caitians really do behave like cats in several crucial ways. As a cat owner for the majority of my life, and in fact, yesterday, so the day after Mugato Gumato aired, I happened to need to bring the cat to the vet, and all I could think about as I was chasing my cat under the bed was the joy of watching Dr. Dana do the same.
Right? And in We'll Always Have Tom Paris, like at the end, you think she's going to be so upset because Kenny needed to get this libido post. That was an interesting way to put it. But no, she just wanted the box it came in. I mean, I dealt with that right before this started. Like, I opened up my shower curtain and my cat was in the shower.
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing here? Like, okay, you got bugs in there, sure.
Yeah, that was I was laughing so much at that scene that my wife, who was in a very important business meeting down the hallway, actually said afterward, I thought that she thought she was going to have to come out and tell me to shut up. It was that, and also the shot of the ship and the little bitty shuttle as it approaches with the dramatic music and concludes with ding. That was. I felt bad for that scene because for all of 2.5 minutes, it was the funniest thing I had ever seen in Star Trek, and then it got bested by the cat leaping into the box, wide eyes, and I think they handled both of those things really brilliantly, and they were brilliant conclusions to those storylines.
So I've been running a poll on the Scotch Tracker Twitter page and on the Scotch Tracker Facebook group between yesterday and today to find out which of the 4 episodes that have aired so far have been thought to be the most popular. On the Facebook, it turned out that Keishon, His Eyes Open was the most popular, and on Twitter, We'll Always Have Paris was voted the most popular.
Huh.
I mean, that's fair. I was actually thinking about the episodes earlier when I was trying to watch them. Like, again, I mentioned the problems I was having watching them. I was just sitting there thinking about the episodes, and like, I swear for at least a good minute, I could not remember the first episode of the season. I was like, what was the name of it? What happened?
Strange Energies.
Like, Strange Energies, right. Ransom became a god.
It was a very, it was an original series episode, not at its best. There was still virtue in it, value to it. It was nice to resolve the Mariner and her mom storyline, so we don't have to deal with that continuously. But
So, according to StarTrek.com's episode count, we'll always have Tom Paris with the 800th episode. But according to Memory Alpha, it's the 804th episode. There's a bit of difference between the Memory Alpha that counts the movies, each of the movies as an episode, and it seems like StarTrek.com counts like 2-parters that aired together like on the same night as differently from if the later aired as 2 separate episodes.
In my frustration that there was no standard for those kinds of things, I created my own list that I've been going, and right now it's not sorted. Let's see, Lower Decks. According to my count, this would have been the 799th episode, and I include all of the short treks as episodes, and I divide the 2-parter live episodes into 2, and partly just for ease of counting the number of units of different lengths, so as to assess the approximate total number of minutes and number of Star Trek that exists, because #nerd.
Because there was like Way of the Warrior and DS9 was like that, and Dark Frontier and Voyager was like that.
Also, the Voyager closer was, I think.
And
possibly All Good Things. I'm not certain of that, but that's sitting somewhere in my memory banks. I
seem to recall there were quite a few when they released like the remastered TNG on Blu-ray. There was quite a few they edited like as like features sort of, and including All Good Things. I really liked the episode title of "We'll Always Have Tom Paris." I kept thinking of that title for years beforehand.
Oh, really?
Because there's We'll Always Have Paris in The Next Generation, and there's the character of Tom Paris, who everyone thinks is so much like Nicholas DiCarno from TNG, but he's clearly got a different name. But with We'll Always Have Tom Paris, I think I really didn't like the episode itself because I thought it was like really boring, unfunny, and just like annoying. I found. I haven't watched it recently, so it escapes my mind what I was thinking at that time, although I have made quite a few notes. What did you think about it being like Tandy and Mariner's first mission together?
I interpreted
funny
that to mean the first mission of just the two of them. I mean, they had been out on planets before at the same time, I'm pretty sure. But well, I find it interesting that you found it didn't engage throughout. One of the aspects I liked about that episode was that it did engage me throughout, partly because we saw different aspects of the Star Trek universe that we've never seen before. We saw an Orion outpost. We saw a little more how that society works. We got to see another trading outpost where Quarks is now this, multinational, which made me very happy. I'm a big Quark fan.
Well, we have like 2 points there. Like we have seen like Orion Outpost before in like the likes of Will You Take My Hand in Discovery and like in Borderlands and stuff like that in Enterprise. And regarding Quarks, we have seen that it's like
that's true.
Apparently become a franchise in Star Trek Picard.
Yeah,
did
wasn't
we
that
see that in
actually
Picard?
the
I forgot
planet from
that.
Stardust City Rag, the Picard episode?
Yeah.
I forgot that. Thank you for the illumination. I genuinely appreciate that. Yeah. I found it quite one of the more engaging. All three storylines kept me engaged in whatever they were doing throughout. They evolved effectively.
I mean, kind of, yeah. My thing against that one would have been actually Rutherford's storyline. Like, obviously he would want to have known how Shax came back from the dead. And you love how they, keyed it up at the beginning with Boimler and Mariner being like, oh, he could have been this, could be this. There's all these different things Star Trek has done. But it didn't really get explained at the end because you're just focusing on like the look of horror as Rutherford's taking it in. Although I did like the little attention to detail about how like his human pupil was round and his cyborg pupil was pixelated.
Yeah.
Like really nice attention to detail. But we didn't really hear what happened to Shax. And even through that episode and Mugato Gumato, I'm still trying to figure out what Shax's role is now. Because usually when something like this happens to a character, they get like their full posting back. But he's clearly not head of security because Kayshawn's still around. But he went on the away mission, pronounced Mugato 3 different ways in like 30 seconds, and that was fun.
Yes. Yeah.
And apparently he likes tasting Mugato poop. Learn about that.
And apparently he and Diana have a something going on, which is interesting. Yeah. Always nice to see a bridge romance that makes you think, wait a minute, and then the next thought is, wow, that could work for a change. Yeah.
Well, it seemed like Tana was like hitting on him like when she's had her. Well, she says, "I've had my medical," but I thought it still depends like how he will and whether he will reciprocate to that or not. Really.
I got the sense from the brief look on his face that there may have been precedent for but it's hard to say. We'll find out. I hope.
Regarding looks on the faces and sexuality and stuff, I thought it was pretty funny look on the face of the Mugato that was involved in the threesome.
And Boimler's, it's hard. Being a voice actor must be a very, very special challenge. And I gain great respect for these actors every episode. And the delivery of the line, it just likes to watch that drift away. But there was still this clinical, scientific thing to it because it's Boimler, right? So I don't know there's much judgment to it, just assessment that as you're saying it, that's kind of okay.
And Danny, who's co-hosted some of the Scotch Tracker episodes, is watching it. She has enjoyed both episodes.
That's fair.
Watching from work, apparently.
Yeah. On the point of Shax, we were talking about, I actually really like the fact that we never really resolved that storyline. It's the songwriter Tom Lehrer from the '60s had a great moment in one of his songs where he's describing some horrible activities, and he leaves out a line in the song, and specifically because anything that we can imagine must be worse than anything he would say. And I feel like the Star Trek writers decided to adopt that philosophy. All we know is there's this Black Mountain where there's this fight against now we are left to depict the worst possible trauma that someone could go through having just died. And
Oh, yeah.
I believe my trauma that I imagine is much worse than the writers would come up with, and because it's my own, it's individual. So I respected that decision on their behalf.
What did you think of sorry. What did you think of yeah, go ahead.
I was saying what's even worse is, Rutherford's brain is half cybernetic, so like we stand a chance of forgetting something like that. He's not going to forget it. It's in his memory bank.
Wow, you're right. Until his face is torn off again, and then he might forget it if he's lucky. But you're right. That's a great point. Wow.
What did you think of Boimler, like when we'll always have Tom Paris starts, like Boimler seems to have like trouble with well, I guess throughout the episode, I think, the turbolift doors and all the rest of it. Why do you think that was included in the episode? To me, like, made no point. I don't understand why it was there.
Well, it's kind of like, for the first couple of episodes, he had what he wanted because he had his promotion. He was working on the Titan. And, now he's back on the Cerritos. The thing I don't understand is why he needed to be demoted. I don't know if it was just so he wasn't like a level above everybody.
Well, I think that's maybe because he's like technically and really like a new person, a different person, because he's the transporter.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
Well,
Yeah.
but the other one seemed to keep his rank. So I agree with you, Scott, that his demotion was unnecessary. Yeah.
Yeah, but they weren't split. There was one that appeared first.
That is true.
Surely that would be the.
Is that really though the first Boimler? Because the other one had to take the time to get himself out of the situation he was in and make it to the shuttlecraft and fly the shuttlecraft out in a comparable period of time. So I would argue that the two are truly coeval, that they are exactly born at the same time and deserve equal rights in the law, as it were.
True.
Well, I was just thinking about how they dealt with Will Riker and Tom Riker, basically.
Well, Tom Riker was away. It wasn't a part of society for however long it was. I don't remember how long he was stranded on that planet. So it makes sense that Will was given primacy of a sort.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. I think it was, which one was it? It was one of Peter David's Imzadi novels. It explores a little bit where Tom Riker, he's off doing his own thing with the Maquis, and he's in, I believe, a Cardassian prison camp, talking to a Romulan, the one who actually took Sela under his wing and trained her. And he's talking about how he did it because he didn't know where his place in the universe really was, because he had a double. He had, Will Riker, who had already gone off and had the successful Starfleet career, and then he was just kind of the leftovers. He rejoined Starfleet, but what was he going to do? So that's why he went off and joined the Maquis. And I think Boimler's kind of doing the same thing, except he's not going to be this version of him's not going to be the kind that's just going to give up Starfleet. He's the super ambitious one. So
yeah.
It's kind of like the thing with the computer not recognizing him is kind of like a metaphor for him trying to find, his place, or to get back into his groove, if you will.
Which he even says point blank in a way that Star Trek rarely does. Well, I don't know where I belong anymore, or something to that effect. Right before he's mistaken for a Kazon. But that's another matter. I actually quite like the fact that there might have been some kind of typographical error or something that meant his biosignature was not fully recognized by the computer. It seemed to me like there must have been a human error behind it. And I like that. One of the things I love about Lower Decks is we get to see people make mistakes much more often than usual Star Trek, or perceived mistakes, I should perhaps say.
Right.
What I don't understand is how on earth that plate stayed in one piece through everything that Boimler had to go through. But I'm willing to set that aside. I think I expected
it to melt when it was in the nacelle, yeah.
Yeah, right.
I didn't understand why he looks so different. like laughingly and humorously, Tom Paris says he's a Klingon, a Kazon. But yeah, it didn't like he seems to go through a radical physical transformation in the Jeffries tubes, and I was like, I don't understand why he looks so different.
So there was that gas that at that point, which because I was
Yeah.
wondering about that too. There was a
It's
gas
another
in that
thing.
location, that particular place where he was hiding, and I like to believe that there are certain properties of that gas that might change the color of fabric, or that might cause him to sweat excessively, and that he, in his stress, would have sweat
Interesting
more,
headcanon.
and he might have rubbed. Yes, that's all headcanon, and rubbed his hair into disarray. I think it's a logical development, even if it was indeed, I agree, a sudden development.
Right.
And what did you think of like the Cation clerk who loves Klingon acid punk?
You know, it was. I'm a fan of opera. Classical music is my bailiwick, but Klingon music has almost always been identified either as opera or as a kind of folk song, whether it be a dirge or a fighting song or something like that, something monophonic unaccompanied. And it was really nice to start seeing even more that there are different kinds of Klingon music out there.
Oh, yeah.
And it allowed for the line that, what's the point of Klingon if it's not punky or acidic? The great choice of adjective. Again, kudos to the writers for that.
I thought it was a bit much like what they already had in the first episodes of Lower Decks called Second Contact, where they go through like a series of like kiosks or whatever, and so many are manned by different people, and yeah, I thought it was like the same sort of area, really.
Yeah.
And what did you think of like Mariner's reference to having broken Worf's Macbeth?
Yeah, I mean, she mentioned serving on ships. She never mentioned anything about DS9.
And I'm intrigued of how then her presence, what years, as it were, that she was on DS9 when Worf was also there. Is there a point in DS9 where we no longer see the Mechlith? Was Mariner there as a cadet during the war? I mean, she's old enough. Could there be a canon where she, flashback where she meets Ezri or something like that? I think it could. They opened up some interesting possibilities with that. The revelation of Mariners that I really appreciated is that it is now officially canon to have a principal character who is bisexual. Or perhaps even pansexual. And even if it was in one line, it's official and they can go places with that. And I think that was a wonderful it fits well within the tradition of Star Trek with the first interracial kiss and the one of the first lesbian kisses in DS9 with Jadzia. And I'm really glad to see Star Trek still making that those kinds of statements. Especially with a character who's as badass as Mariner.
Wait, there was one earlier, though, in a TNG episode, wasn't there? With the Trill that was, like, in love with Beverly, and then at one point the host was a woman?
And it was called The Host.
It was probably called the host, yeah.
I
think I have it memorized by now.
Did they actually kiss? I don't remember. I remember the press coming out with in the DS9 one.
That I don't remember
well,
for sure.
Yeah.
I just remember I remember the Trill itself seemed to be the one that was romantically attached to Beverly, and then it was in the Trill, and then it was in Riker, and then there was a woman, and
Well, my point being more that there's a central character, even a top billing character who would be bisexual or who gets credits in the opening credit sequence. Maybe that's the guiding line.
Okay, so I think maybe Jadzia might qualify for that because there is no kiss in The Host, but there is a kiss in Rejoined, when she's reunited with Lanara Khan.
right, yep.
And then the first homosexual male kiss was not until Discovery.
It was Discovery, right?
Unfortunately, yeah.
Regarding that reference to Mariner having broken Worf's Macbeth, I felt like it was a bit like disrespectful because like it seemed like it was like making fun of it was saying like Worf wouldn't have noticed it. I was like, that doesn't make sense to me. He's like a trained tactical officer. That's pretty good observation, I think. I was,
Yeah, you might have noticed if a weapon was broken.
yeah.
Wonder if she meant broken and then reassembled.
Yeah, I thought she did. But even then, I thought, like, surely he's going to notice it, even then.
I wonder what kind of alloy a mechlith is made of. And if it could be melted in a particular way or something, refashioned to really become functionally one. I don't know enough about chemistry to know if even such a thing is feasible.
Yeah. Chemistry, metallurgy, Klingon metals, no idea.
Yeah.
And then we've also seen Nausicans. I wondered what you
Yes,
thought
the
of those.
Nausicans.
Playing Domjot again. I love that the proprietor said that he just had the table re-jotted, which makes me think of the etymology of Domjot. So there's a Dom that is being jotted, apparently. And I want to know, is the Dom the ball? Is the Dom the knobs that you have to hit for it to be re-jotted? These are the things that cross my mind watching Star Trek.
I thought,
Yeah, you gotta be
like,
careful.
not
You don't
only
want
was
to
it cool... I thought not only was it cool that they brought the Nausicans back, but that it was actually at Starbase Earhart that's in Tapestry. For the next
Oh,
generation.
right. Oh, wow, that's going all the way back.
Well done. Yeah. It was the same base. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's nice, too, that we've seen so many Tellarites in Lower Decks. I feel like they're constantly in the background or bit characters, because we haven't really seen much of them other than original series and a bit of Enterprise, I think.
You know, like the... I can't remember its name, but we'll talk about it later, I guess. But like the biologist guy that gets like eaten alive in Mugato, Gumato.
The Australian.
Apparently, Larry Nemechek has been saying that he thinks he's half Tellarite.
Really?
I got that impression from the nose shape and the face of the face shape somewhat.
Yeah, looks
Right.
very much like a Tellarite.
Yeah.
But the Nausicans, I thought they were illustrated like really too simplified. I thought it didn't look like anything basically like they look in live action. But I liked that they came back and it seemed like the portrayal of their personalities. I thought seemed consistent with how they'd been established before.
That's true.
Unlike the Packlids, somewhat earlier in the series, I think.
I still think I think we've talked about this, where I still think that we're going to get another explanation about the Packlet's change as the season expands or continues.
Yeah, we kind of need one.
Yes.
Well, I think maybe it's like similar to like the Ferengi in Mugato Gumato, where like there's different members of the species that just like have different personalities and different ethical beliefs and stuff like that. Maybe. But,
yeah, and in the episode
Definitely
before
see
it,
it
they were
later.
talking about the differences between Orions.
Right.
Like with the whole pheromone, was the pheromone thing?
Yeah.
The Nausicans were talking
Yeah.
about, and Tendy, I think she said like she can't even do that.
From Bound, yeah.
Or I
so-
think in her case that was more of a moral thing. She didn't want to do the pheromone thing to the Nausicans, even though she had the ability.
What did you think about like the return of Tom Paris? Were you glad to see him back?
Sure.
I was glad to see Tom Paris back. Sure. I admittedly, I don't know if I was surprised or pleased to see, like, I kind of felt like when, he wanted to take control of the helm and Captain Freeman's like, sure, just don't drive us to the Delta Quadrant.
Right.
I feel like it would have been totally within character if he, turned away and rolled his eyes like, yeah, I never heard that before. I feel like
Nice.
everybody's been telling him that since he got back from the void.
Right.
Yeah, I'll call it the void.
Yeah, really like frustrated me. Because for ages I was like hoping they were going to do like an episode of Short Tracks that would go into be like a black and white episode and go into the Captain Proton and like even if they didn't go with that idea, like I still would Would have loved to see like a live action Tom Paris come back. But on the other hand, I guess there's nothing stopping that happening.
Right.
It's just that it hasn't been, that way to begin with, at least.
It's always fun though to have someone come in from old school, from second generation Trek, especially Robbie McNeil, because he's still so integrated into Star Trek culture. He's directed episodes with his and Garrett Wang's podcast. So I feel like it's a reward in a way for him, or a nod of gratitude to the actor to be invited back. And I hope we see a lot more of that. And I'm not too picky about the means in which it happens. It was like seeing Admiral Janeway in Nemesis.
In this one, in this one, I felt like there seemed like nothing that he does in the story that like they couldn't have like some like visiting admiral do instead. Like, like they've got the references like to like just don't take us into the Delta Quadrant. But apart from those like Easter eggs and references, like his part in the story wasn't dependent on him having been on Voyager. I don't think. I
think though that the key is the plate. The fact that there should be commemorative plates for Voyager fits perfectly. I bet you there are 160 of them, or how many different people there are, and that is part of Boimler finding himself is very similar to the aspect of the Voyager crew trying to find themselves in both a metaphysical and literal sense. So I feel like there could be even a parallel between what they were going through, and I just made that up, so it may not hold water. So I think Paris as the plate was very helpful. It could have been any other Voyager character, sure, but the plate was more important to the episode than Paris himself. Yes.
So you wouldn't think there might be plates of admirals?
Well, Boimler said he had like the entire crew from Janeway down to Kim, and
right,
she's an admiral at this point. Mm-hmm. Now, if he'd managed to get a Tuvix plate, that would have been something.
Oh, I feel like Tuvix is one of those things that when the crew gets back, they just don't talk about. It, talking to Shax about his death. He just mentioned Tuvix, and all of Voyager crew just kind of look and then walk away.
Oh, that would have been great.
When you see Boimler avoiding, it seems like plasma or something like that in the Jeffries tube, I thought that was cool. Because it like reminded me of Archer and Trip in the access shafts in the episode of Zindi. I thought it was a reference to that.
Yeah, but I don't think Mariner would be able to. I don't think that Boimler would be able to hold back all that plasma with around the plate. That kind of irked me, but I'll forgive the writers that one.
And like the last note that I made, like the last thing that irritated me about the episode was I felt like it changed setting like an awful lot and awfully quickly. Like I was just getting used to the setting of Quailer 2, and then it changed to like the Orion Outpost. I was like, you need to keep up with everything that's going on here. It's so quick.
It's kind of like the chase, right, where they keep going around from one planet
to
another.
Yeah.
Think, really, how did you get there that fast? And in this case, especially in a shuttle, which... Yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought that was the last note I made, but no, it wasn't.
I love this as the notes of things that irritated you about the episode. And one by one, we're saying, oh, that's all right, it's fine.
They're not everything. I thought it was cool that there's a line where when all these Shaxes are appearing, and one says, what was the deal with DePaul's hair for that 1 year? And then another says, in an X's, it's always Christmas.
And then there's the one that just keeps saying, mirror, 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 mirror.
I missed that. I like the one in Victorian garb, in the full black Victorian. Yeah. Like, I want to know that backstory, or that story in Rutherford's imagination.
And, I don't understand what was the need for, like, the collision was. Like, Mariner drives her shuttlecraft towards the Cerritos. I'm like, why is she doing that?
Oh, that's so that there would be an excuse for the libido statue to be destroyed. So the force of the collision would have broken the what was it? Was a libido post? Was that it?
Post.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's how I read that. Yeah.
I love that the
Libido
force of the collision. It's like damage report, none. Like you saw.
That's
him.
weird. Yeah. That sound effect.
So, also, like, well, this is the last note that I made about the episode. Like, I wondered, like, if you have any thoughts about what happens to Tom Paris after it.
Oh. Well, he said he's doing some kind of like visiting tour. But yeah, like what he's doing after that, I don't know. Like,
What's interesting, he kept his
Presumably-
rank. He's still in
that's
Starfleet.
great. Yeah. So presumably he has a commission somewhere.
It's
I
interesting.
could see him doing something like training pilots or advising on engine, not necessarily efficiency, but engine operations. I could see him and Torres actually touring as a pair, doing something like that.
So, I thought we could go into discussing more about Mugato, Gumato, or how
You mean
say it.
Mugato, Gumato?
Yeah, so a question I noted down was, what do you think about the Mugato being called a Gumato and that's interchangeable and now canon?
Yeah,
Was
it
that like a
funny how-
mistake that was... Oh, go ahead, Scott.
Yeah, it was funny how Boimler brought that up, and then like immediately the next scene they're about to transport down, and in like the space of, I think just like 2 sentences, Shax
Yes.
says it 2 different ways,
3.
and then when
Yeah.
they get down on the planet, he says it another different way. So it's interesting how it is canon that like we have no idea how to pronounce this. Say what you feel. We'll understand.
That creature has appeared was in The Cage, and therefore in the Menagerie. Wasn't that the one? I was trying to remember where we've
It
seen...
was the
A
TOS.
Private Little War,
Yep, that one.
and
which-
apparently it's A Private Little War
In A Private Little War, okay.
with Tyrese people.
Did they actually
apparently-
mispronounce the name multiple times? Different characters pronounce it
Well-
differently in that episode? I hadn't looked that up.
If they do, it must be
I can't
very minor. I watched part of the episode today and didn't really pick up like huge differences. They don't say Gumato, but apparently it was in the script as Gumato, and then it was something like Shatner couldn't say that, or someone couldn't say that, so they started saying Mugato, and everyone then changed to Mugato. But then it ended up in the episode's end credits as Gumato.
I just can't pronounce it. We're going to have to pronounce this differently. That is a terrible Shatner. I apologize for that.
The pacing was right, though, and that's what matters when for Shatner.
So, did you think any moments in this episode were particularly funny?
Yes. Sorry, I'm butting in, but the subplot
Go
with
ahead.
Tendi, which was actually what I liked a little more about this episode, because like I said, the main plot was all tropey. I paused on the list of people that she needed to scan, because I'm sure most people did. Like the psychiatrist is on there, the one that makes all the food references. Stevens, who's like Ransom's toady or whatever. Apparently his name is Lieutenant Steve Stevens.
Mm-hmm.
And I just kind of wanted to yell at his parents.
Well, I know a guy named Steve
but then the
Steffens,
last-
so, that's fair.
I'm gonna go yell at his parents then. My gosh, that's just terrible. But the last one, Jet was on the list, and I was like, his name is Ensign Jet Manhaver.
Yeah.
Like, who came up with this name?
Or is it
honestly.
Manhaver?
Or Manhaver?
Yeah.
We need to figure
I
that
still
out.
love
Like, at some point, somebody needs to say his full name so we can get that right.
I
Yeah.
agree.
Do you know like what havering means in Scotland?
No.
I feel like I should, but I
It's
don't.
just talking nonsense, basically. You're havering. Anyway, I thought the moment in this episode that was, I think, funniest, I found funniest was when Stevens is trying to like impress a lady by claiming that he's super fit, and then his hip like causes excruciating pain.
Right? Oh, that's good.
I
Or
don't know,
like
I
how,
don't-
go ahead. I've talked enough. You go ahead, Gary.
I feel like I've talked enough. You can go ahead, but I'll go. The problem I had with that moment was I thought, if I were single, I'm afraid that could happen to me. So,
Oh no.
although no one would believe that I'm fit anyway. I loved the chasing of the cat through the bowels of the ship, and the
Right,
actual
it was
the
great.
hissing sounds and the scratch. It
Yeah.
was exactly right to
really
my
was.
experience, and I appreciate that they actually went that far with it. To say, okay, it's a cat. What does it do? And write it in.
Yeah. I was listening to a review somebody else did of the episode, and one of the comments happened to be somebody was talking about how much they like Dr. Tiana because they just basically took McCoy and made him a cat. It's great. I was like, yes, exactly.
That's brilliant. Wow.
So it's maybe like a mix between McCoy and Emrys from the animated series. Because it's
Oh yeah,
being Cation.
Yep. That's right.
Except Dr. Tiana has a very different personality. I mean, the only thing she shares with the animated series episode seems to be species.
Yeah, and it looks quite different because Emrys has got like longer hair and stuff like that. What
yeah.
did you think of the pre-credit sequence of Mugato, Gumato? Scott?
Is that when? That's when. No, that's not right.
Ambo
The
Jaitsu?
pre-credit sequence where they were playing. No, dang it. That's the Ajujitsu scene.
Ambo,
Yes.
Oh my word.
Like, okay, we've had some practice of this. We think we can take you, Mariner. And they get in like one good hit and like, all right, now it's on. And she just beats him to hell. And Shax walks in like, it's fine, I can wait. He's killing us. Put the kid gloves back on.
Yeah, it was impressive the confidence that those three combatants have in the ship's medical personnel was
Oh, right.
very impressive.
Right,
I don't
'cause-
think I could do
Yeah.
be beaten to a pulp.
Right? You literally see Rutherford get stabbed through the hand.
Yes.
I think
Well,
I was,
later
I think
we
I was
see-
actually,
And with Tendy's
Yeah.
arm broken as a compound fracture, so another one.
yeah.
Ow,
Yeah.
that would hurt. It was a bit gory, but it worked.
Okay, I'll sort of spoil what I was going to say later in the review by saying I really enjoyed this episode on the whole, but the pre-credit sequence really frustrates me because, like, watching it, I was like, where's the evolved sensibilities of Roddenberry humans? Basically, like, the characters can't stop berating each other, basically hammering each other, but on the other hand, I liked seeing Ambo Jiaitsu again from the Icarus Factor, I think. Like, Riker, that's the one with Riker, Pulaski, and Riker's dad. I'm pretty sure, like, Riker's dad fights Riker, I think, using Ambo.
oh yeah. And he's talking about how he couldn't believe that Riker didn't accept the captaincy of the Ares.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
All I know is I'm not going to be taking part in that anytime soon. I don't think I can handle even sparring in that.
I felt like also, like, that was like a microcosm of one of the issues I have with Lower Decks, because so often, like, they are berating each other, and just, I'm like, this isn't the same as the Next Generation, like, ethos, sort of. I felt that way.
I come from a family that we often would put meaningless little jibes to each other. Generally ones that we knew to be inaccurate, and that's what made it okay. And I feel like this group of four tends to behave similarly. But you're right, they do talk smack to each other in a way that's not historical Star Trek. Yeah.
And presumably, unlike them, you wouldn't resort to, like, physical violence.
No.
Oh no. No.
Fortunately, no.
But
the notion of letting off steam through a good, boxing spar or wrestling or things like that, I know people who do that or have done that. So I can understand that impulse of humanity would still exist. I think the one thing I really liked about that scene is the reminder that of the four principal characters of Lower Decks, it's the women who are the great fighters and the great badass people.
Oh,
And
yeah.
we haven't seen that historically in Star Trek or in fiction. And even if we've only really seen it from Tendi the one time when she was the fixer, was that it? And
Right.
it's still refreshing and pleasant to see.
Yeah, and how she apparently has like some sort of dominion over Orion males. Yeah.
Well, that's an Orion characteristic, right? Is it Enterprise where we learned that? I don't remember now.
Yeah, in the episode Bound.
Dan, your ability to pull episode titles and species names, it continues to astonish me, and I applaud you.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Seriously, I
Regarding the
can't name one.
Mugato, I thought it's a bit similar to like how they've now got an interchangeable name. Is a bit similar. I was thinking if we've seen like any precedents of that up to now, and I was thinking, well, yeah, the Vulcans originally were known as Vulcanians, for example, and the Bajorans were known collectively as Bajora initially. So I thought, yeah, there is precedent for that. Regarding species, after the opening credits, we come back to see like a pair of Denobulan researchers. I tweeted like I really liked seeing the Denobulans, love seeing the Denobulans in this episode. It's having written extensively about the Denobulans on Memory Alpha. Basically, single-handedly wrote the article about them on Memory Alpha and turned it into a feature article. And like Mike McCann gave that tweet a like today. I thought, oh, that's cool.
They've done such a great job of finding niche species and things like that.
Yeah.
I suspect that McCann is extra pleased when people notice those details because of the amount of work it must have taken to get those details in and make them reliable. Right.
And
Right.
in addition to
And
the Ferengi and the Mugatos, the other species basically that comes back in this episode is the Kazinti, which you briefly see in the bar from the animated series episode, The Slaver Weapon.
All right.
Nice.
Wait, what is the species of that guy that tries to scam the Cerritos? I totally forgot
I
about
looked
that.
it up and these. Yeah, I thought that they sort of missed a trick. Maybe you're talking about the green guy, right?
Yeah. It turns out to be
Yeah.
like a con artist. Like,
Was
yeah,
he
I
the
just lost
same
all my valuables. They
species?
look exactly like those.
According to Memory Alpha, this species is not. It's
Oh,
like a
wow.
brand new one.
It looks so much to me like the species who was eating lizards, who Mariner tried to save. But I never went so far as to compare them. So if Memory Alpha says they're distinct,
Okay.
that's what I had
Well,
assumed.
it might not be, of course, identified yet by Memory Alpha. It can take some time. So,
And if it's
For
not
Memory
because
Alpha
of
even to
that, it's a
pick up.
species of con artists.
Well, one of the things I
Sorry, what was
like is that we especially in Lower Decks, as we've alluded to, is we get to see different, Ryan's Ferengi and such behaving differently than the norm. Even Paklets, though.
Oh yeah.
Anyway, enough on that. So it's that other species can be as diverse as humans helps to remind us that it's okay for we as humans to be diverse. That we don't need to fear other cultures.
Right.
Yeah, that reminder of that important. I think that lesson is very important in today's society.
Very true.
And then there's like the scene where Maddener encounters or meets Boimler and Rutherford, and they're playing Diplomat. What did you think about that game?
Oh my gosh, that game. A game where the objective is apparently for both players to kind of lose.
Yes.
And then they high five and we're like, we're both disappointed.
Yay! Yeah, and I mean, I'm a big board game player when it's possible to assemble with real people and play board games. And I'm also by nature a diplomat. Before I chose a career in music, I had wanted to be a diplomat, ambassador, work for the Foreign Service. So to see that game meld two of my dearest loves brought great joy to my heart and also reminded me how ridiculous I am in a very positive way. And I appreciated that.
So I noted down, like, I had frustration with Madden saying that she thought Boimler and Rutherford should take up a less embarrassing hobby than diplomat. But by the end of the episode, I was thinking, like, clearly, like, at the start of the episode, they're ribbing each other so much. And then, like, by the end of the episode, they have that initial conflict or whatever. And then by the end of the episode, it goes through that arc of they sort of make up again or whatever. The situation between them is not so tense.
I think that Mariner, though she would deny it, is a perfectionist. And she doesn't like being wrong. She wants to get everything right the first time. And when she saw how the two of them handled the Ferengi through the power of disappointing compromise, I think that, and we see it in her face, it was great animation. She was genuinely impressed. And I think the reason she was willing to play that game with them is she wanted to learn that skill so that she could perfect that too. That's how I would interpret that psychologically for the character. The fact that she was then already winning at the game is wonderfully telling to me.
Yeah, and that raises the question: did she barely know how to play, or did she just pick it up really quickly?
Well, we know she was a Domjot shark, as it were.
Oh, right.
So claiming to be a beginner. But I don't know. I think she was a natural at the game.
Probably.
Yeah. Again, as a board gamer, I hate people like that, but that's okay. I'll still play with them.
Did you have any thoughts about the bartender? I think his name's, is it Honus? Honus?
I loved his accent because I can kind of do that accent. It's kind of like the old timey New Englander. I was got a story to tell.
Yes, right. That's good. Your Vermont is coming out, right?
Yeah, that happens. I'll still every once in a while I'll still be in a conversation. I'll just be like, yeah. It's a little bit of it's kind of a slowed down Tom Bodette from the Motel 6 commercials, which makes sense because I believe he is actually from Vermont.
That's a really impressive deep dive. Well done. That's good. I liked the lighting that they did with that character, even more than that. Whenever he was being conspiratorial, he would move forward, and we see the shadow on his faces.
And the music still.
Yes, right. Well, this composer for Lower Decks is an absolute genius.
Oh, yeah.
It's done every episode so far, I think, and Honus is an interesting character. He actually bothered me a little bit, kind of to Scott's point earlier about other matters. He's such a trope to be the bartender who just passes secrets and who you don't really know about and who looks furtively. Though I like the fact that we learn he's not particularly good at his job.
Right.
He doesn't deliver the drinks well. But I think they could do interesting things with the character if they so chose. And if they don't, I won't be bent out of shape for it.
It will be interesting to see if it comes back in a certain way because Mariner was saying she made up those stories about herself, and then right at the end, she's making up a story about Boimler and Rutherford. So it'll be interesting to see if that spreads through the ship, and by the end of the season, they have a reputation as Mugato hunters.
Yeah, right.
I just mispronounced that again.
Well, that'd be cool.
Mugato.
I thought it was I thought it was like a cool reflection of how some fans have speculated about who Madner, in quotes, really is. Because Gary, you and I've spoken about that. I think when we were discussing Strange Energies and stuff like that. The fans have speculated about is she an alien, or how come she's served in so many ships and stuff like that. And I thought also harkened back a little bit to. It was reminding me of the Voyager conspiracy, where Seven it's Janeway must be in the wrong.
Yeah, where Seven believes that there are all kinds of conspiracies that led Voyager to be stranded there, and the Maquis were involved and all this. Yeah, which is not one of my favorite episodes, though I understand it's getting quite a lot of more interest recently. My dear hope is that the writers they will continue along the notion that Mariner is just a human, and she has strengths and she has weaknesses, and one of those is she doesn't respect authority, but and that's why she has to jump around ship to ship and keeps getting demoted. But that at her core, she believes, and we've seen this in part by her attempts to rescue the lizard people. But that she at her core wants everybody to be happy and well, and so she sees the value of Starfleet in spreading that across the quadrant. And in that respect, I love that, because that's where I find that I link with Mariner about is her conscience, and that she wants everybody to be good, and she works damn hard to accomplish that. I don't work that hard, so that's why I'm kind of envious of Mariner. But yes, please, let's hope that she's just a human, and be happy with the fact that people can be powerful and weak at the same time.
Yeah,
I was a
it
bit
kinda seems
disappointed. Sorry. What were you saying?
Well, it kind of seems like, I don't know, maybe it's just me. I kind of have a little bit of a theory that maybe she's just like a little bit older, because like some of the things from the first season, like, she has a friend who comes as like serves as acting captain, and presumably they are the same age because they were in the academy together. And Boimler says this thing about, when he was in the academy with Fletcher, and he has to explain that to Mariner because clearly she wasn't there. So I don't think they're quite the same age. So she might be just like slightly older and more experienced.
That's good.
I was disappointed that Madner's record doesn't say anything at all, because like they could have cleared up the speculation surely a little bit more if it did actually say she's definitely human or.
Yeah, they're keeping up the mystery. They're good at that.
That's true. That's worth it.
And I thought Boimler referring to Tuvok infiltrating the Maquis and saying there were a ton of Black Ops agents in Starfleet during the Dominion War. I thought that was probably like my favourite Easter egg reference in Lower Decks so far. I thought it was great. Here's a question. Now that Shax is back, what do you think like the point of still having Keishon as the tactical officer of the Cerritos?
I feel like one of them's going to die.
Oh, right. I wondered if you think there'll
Because
be
it does
some
seem
more
like
as
they're
the season goes
almost doing
on.
the same job.
It would be entertaining if Shax dies at the end of every season.
Oh my god! Yes.
I doubt they'll do it, but I would. Well, I mean, my issue with Shax coming back to life is that now anytime a bridge officer dies in any series, I'm not going to believe it as much, or when there's the threat of death. And that was already starting when they turned Jean-Luc Picard into an android. I haven't come to terms with that.
I think that was already happening when Data apparently died in Nemesis, and fans were like, he's going to come back.
Oh, he's dead. He's not coming back. What you got B4?
But he at least came back as in an imagination. He didn't come back in corporeal form.
Yeah, but just the speculations of that he's going to come back because it's clearly like such a reference to the Wrath of Khan. I'm not confident that. I just want to see where they're going to put Shax before I would make any suppositions or thoughts on his role as opposed to or vis-a-vis Keishon's. I mean, they're both interesting characters. I'd love to see them both there. But.
Oh, absolutely. I would love to know the programming that was involved to get the universal translator to understand Tamarian.
Yes.
Like, how do you get that to understand metaphor?
Yeah. I'd like to see the team of anthropologists, of Federation anthropologists and linguists that must have gone to the homeland of the children of Tamar and cataloged somehow these things, because it would be all vocabulary and little grammar. And I mean, the grammar seems to be pretty simple in that language, but it's the vocabulary that's complex for all intents and purposes. How to do that? That would be a fascinating short treks or something, or a flashback in Keishon's life.
How did you think like the Frankie and Mugato were portrayed in this episode?
It was very old school. It was like when we first see the very first episode we see the Ferengi Next Generation, the whips, and
Last
that
episode.
kind of thing, which we haven't seen much of, but they're pretty cool. Yeah, again, it's nice to see Ferengi who are just not good people, because it reminds us that there are Ferengi who are at least decent people.
Although I guess by the end they are, or at least better people.
Yes, better. I'll give you that.
And the Mugato.
I honestly
Or
can't remember
Mugato.
Private Little War, so I can't remember what they were like before.
Oh right. Okay.
Yeah.
I think they just make basically like one appearance in the episode, from what I could tell, and it's just attacking Kirk because then he's poisoned and then treated for having been poisoned. And yeah, it's just like
right.
growling and stuff.
Yeah, right. And the poison thing, like Shax apparently get poisoned, and then Boimler and
Mhm.
Rutherford Submariner like stab him and suck the poison out. Like, oh my gosh, she is a secret operative. Just
Yeah.
like it plays to the trope. I hate it.
Were any of you fooled by that? I think
No,
Madden
because by the time they were really starting to believe that she was a secret operative, I was like, yeah, I see where this is going to go. But you know what? We'll watch the rest of the episode. We'll see what happens.
Oh yeah,
Like it was,
I had forgotten that the Mugato were venomous at that particular point. So why is she doing that? I don't get that, but they'll explain it. But I never believed she was Black Ops. It would be too much of a shift of her character to happen in a fourth episode of a season. It's like this. Yeah.
I kept thinking maybe like it's laying groundwork, and maybe they will like establish at the end of the season finale that she actually is, or something like that. A bit like, just throwing fans off the scent temporarily in the same way they did with Spock again in the Wrath of Khan, where like with the Kobayashi Maru, that you think, oh, that must be it, he's dead then, because it had been rumored up to then, but then. And thinking that was, trying to make the fans think that was what rumored, and then killing them at the end of the film for real. So yeah, I thought like with in Madiner's case, they might do similarly in that they might make her Black Ops at the end of the season.
There's something about that. I think I heard somewhere that like when they were shooting Wrath of Khan, like plot points and scripts I think kept leaking. So you might be right that they like showed him dying because they found out at some point that Spock was going to die, so they showed him dying or doing that at the beginning to throw everybody off.
Yeah, that's what happened. I've got a really good book about the making of Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. I think it's called The Making of Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. But it goes through like all the story outlines and stuff like that that were written for the film. And like originally it was like halfway through the film. And then that leaked, and they were like, "Oh, what do we do now?" So that's what.
What do we do now? We write one of the saddest death scenes in Star Trek history,
and include the Kobayashi Maru.
Is it? My sitting somewhere in again my positronic net is the memory that that Leonard Nimoy at that point wanted out of Star Trek, and so that killing Spock was something that appeased him for that, and that the only way that they brought him, the only way he was expressed willingness to come back to do the Search of Spock is if he also got to direct it, which of course he did.
And then it led to apparently contractually Shatner having to direct one as well.
The Favored Nations clause was not about that.
So I liked how they referenced Last Outpost, and that is the first episode that introduced the Ferengi in the Next Generation. But I thought it was cool that that Madden actually says their Last Outpost style Ferengi in the dialogue.
Did she? Wow.
Yeah, she said that. Yeah.
The Mugato, I thought, basically just like big apes. Basically, I thought they could have been taken more. I don't know, some interesting direction, because they're not that different, I don't think, from how they are in a Private Little War.
Right.
Although you do see, thought it was cool. You see like a baby Mugato
Yeah.
in a way.
And
It was
we
nice
got to
seeing
see,
the-
yeah, there was so much more to Mugato as a species. We get to see them being caring to the baby and to each other in different ways. And I don't just mean the sex scene. But later, when we see that that they have this expansive, what's the term, reserve that will now be just theirs, we get the notion that they aren't just a violent species who will attack everybody. That they want families, they care about that, and they want their own space. The Mugato do, and it again reinforces that all species are have variety to them, and that we shouldn't judge an entire species by one scene in the original series or anything else.
There is one thing,
yeah.
wasn't the whole point of this, like at the beginning, Captain Freeman was talking about how they weren't on their native planet.
They're not
So,
indigenous.
Yeah.
If they're setting up the preserve, like why did they do it on this planet? Like why didn't they move them back to their home planet?
Yeah.
Now that I think about it, like
Well, I
even the
thought
frame-
maybe they don't know.
Oh yeah.
They are on their native planet in the private little world, which is called Neural.
Did you
Well,
look
that's
that up, or
interesting.
do you remember that?
I saw it written online.
That's fair. That's allowed.
The message, like the trader, I think it is. The green guy contacts the
Yeah.
Cerritos, sort of like his way of speaking and stuff like that was basically reminding me of Voyager, because in Voyager there's so many species that's like come across as hostile and we're not interested in helping you and stuff like that, and then you've got like the explosion of the ship that I think reminded me a little bit of Mud Swimming, where the ship breaks up, where the hero ship is basically the series is trying to rescue it.
The notion of self-destructing one's own ship in order to try to extort a better ship, though, seems like a very questionable business model.
Well, it seemed very much to me like even more Harry Mudd like.
Yeah, well, questionable business models. There we go, Harry Mudd.
Yeah.
So, there's a lot of risk in that. Your ship blows up, and there's no real guarantee that you're going to get another. And unless I guess, well, yeah. Nah.
So the researcher, or as he calls himself, a renowned biologist, is called Batinga. The Tellurite or half Tellurite, it looks like. I thought it was cool, like that he says he's renowned, and yet we never even heard of him at all in canon.
Let's face it, we all know people like that. Who say, I have 4 books about something, and we think that they wrote it, but they actually just read it.
Yeah.
Renowned biologist, you're a renowned book reader.
Right.
Yeah, regarding the Mugato sex scene, I was like, we've just had like the Cation sexuality like established and referenced and stuff. Why are there so many sex gags in the series? I thought it was a bit much, like one after the other.
There's also more nudity in Lower Decks than we've seen before. It's a facet of human life, so why not? And you can get away with things when they're animated. You can't get away with when there are physical actors involved.
It seems like more swearing than other series as well. But,
well, of course, that's what makes it great.
Bleep that.
Yeah, true. I'm still trying to find like a Star Trek series my kids would like to watch, because I know they're not going to sit down for an hour-long drama. So I figure a half-hour cartoon comes along, that'd be fine, but then it's like rated TV 14 and above. Like, nope.
Well, that's Prodigy. Prodigy is for you then, or will be. So they say.
I'm waiting on Prodigy. Believe me, I'm really hoping.
Well, one question I had about that was like how much it's going to be sort of speaking down to the audience or whatever. But apparently, it won't be like that. It's been established like adults can watch it and enjoy it as well.
Well, there's so many wonderful animated things in the world that are very satisfying to adults. One that leaps to my mind is Avatar: The Last Airbender. But even back to Bugs Bunny, like watch it as an adult, and it's hilarious still. And there are levels of depth to that. So there's no reason I think Prodigy couldn't achieve both of those ends at the same time, especially given how clever the writers of all three currently on the air shows have revealed themselves to be. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and not gonna lie, the newer incarnation of My Little Pony, not the one that's going to be like on Netflix. There was I forget what channel it was on. It was My Little Pony: Friendship is Magic. It was kind of geared toward adults as well as kids, because you do have colorful ponies running around, but they had open references to Back to the Future and Doctor Who and The Big Lebowski.
Really?
Not plot elements so much, but you have characters like you have a pony sitting there with like this big unkempt beard and mane, wearing sunglasses, and his cutie mark, the mark that all the ponies have, was a rug. It was like, okay, I see what that is. I gotcha.
Wow. And that's because My Little Pony was such a big deal when folks roughly our age, and we're all different ages, I'm sure, but we were young, so now it's being written for the adults to reminisce about using those different things. So it makes sense they would do that. I'm impressed that they are.
Yeah.
Regarding references, because
just throwing it out there, John Delancey did voice work on that show. He's a character named Discord who is basically a Q.
Now there's a crossover we need.
Yes!
Star Trek My Little Pony cross. I've never heard of that suggested. So graphic novel people, especially get on this.
Yeah. Well, we
regarding references, as a sort of big music fan and obviously a fan of Star Trek, I really liked that. Captain Freeman offers the trader shuttlecraft. And the name of the shuttlecraft I noticed was Joshua Tree. It was like, oh, that's a cool reference to the E2 album, even though I know as well it's obviously an area in the US as well.
Wait, a reference to, what did you say it was a reference to you?
Well, there's a U2 album called The Joshua Tree.
Oh, yeah. Well, see, whereas my thought was, so they're California class ships, right? And the Joshua Tree is a California thing. So I figured it was just something that grows out of California, is that tree. But yeah.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah, I just thought to myself, like, it could be either.
Yeah.
Yeah, they get good cuts like that. What was it? Cupid's Errant Arrow, right? So Boimler's girlfriend, she serves on the U.S. or the Vancouver. Right. So, like, technically, it's like she's his Canadian girlfriend. Like, we don't know her. She lives in Canada.
That's brilliant! Wow.
That was kind of stuck on me a little bit because there is a Vancouver on the American side in Washington. Yeah,
yes,
you live in
I know several people. I have several good friends who live there. Yeah.
Yeah.
But you say Vancouver, nobody thinks about that one, and nor should they. Yeah. I was just so excited that it was the Vancouver because it's my northern cousin. I'm in Seattle, so we three, Portland, Seattle, Vancouver, we all kind of band together psychologically in different ways.
Yeah.
But that's brilliant. My Canadian girlfriend. Wow.
Going back to what we were talking about earlier, and like sort of speaking down to the audience, I felt there was a line in this episode of Lower Decks that did that. When Rutherford says, like, brains are inside of our skins. I thought, like, you don't need to say that. I thought it was, I thought it was too childish.
No.
Why not? Do you mean to tell me, Dan, that you have not been childish once this week? Well, and that's what I love about Lower Decks in a kind of microcosm. Is that Lower Decks is about all of us. It's I would never make it on the bridge. I've said this before in this channel, but I could be a Lower Decks ensign and in stellar cartography or something and have a career. And that's what Lower Decks really reinforces to me. These are normal people. They're people who swear. They're people who get along sometimes and don't at others. There are people who have diverse interests, whether they be board games or, it's different than string quartets, perhaps. I don't know if Next Generation. But it's that Lower Decks is about just people being people. And the adventure, the boldly going, is ancillary to that. It's what supports the character study. And I think this is the first time Star Trek has really hit hard on that side. Voyager, they went halfway there, but and Discovery is doing it now, but they didn't when they started, in my opinion. Anyway.
Yeah, it was like in Kayshawn, His Eyes Open, when Boimler's going on with a whole spiel about how Starfleet's about exploring and seeking out new life. And then the other members of his away team, who are all these huge badasses serving on the Titan, like, oh yeah, I got into Starfleet for different reasons.
Yeah, I got here to study moss. I love that. Because there are people who study moss on the Enterprise D and that kind of thing. You think, why are you in Starfleet? Just studying moss. Anyway.
But regarding people being people or Cations being Cations, what did you think about like Tandy scanning Tana, or how do you say it? Tiana?
Tiana.
Yeah, and to me, like, I thought it was odd that she scans her and nothing is then detected. I thought it might have been maybe a more interesting plot twist or whatever if something strange was detected, but I wondered if you guys would have any thoughts about what that might be or where that might go.
The whole notion, I think it's resolved by Dr. Tiana's line afterward when she says, well, that wasn't such a big deal. Why was, that wasn't so painful. Why did I make such a big deal out of that? Because I don't know how many times I've said that to my cat in the carrier on the way home. It's like, you see, that wasn't such a big deal. Why did you make such a deal of it? There's nothing wrong. It's just routine. And yet a cat still freaks out. I love it. Yeah.
Also, though, she was saying, she's a doctor. She would know if anything was wrong with her. But I couldn't help thinking, she's a doctor. She would know what the scan entails and how bad it would be, good or bad.
Yes.
So I'm not sure why she had such an aversion to it.
She's a cat.
Besides the fact that she's a cat.
That's all she needs.
Don't put that strange thing in me.
It did make sense to me, the Frankie, one of the Frankie leaders basically says that he has heard of Quark. He's like, of course I've heard of Quark. And it occurred to me, that seems clear that he would have heard of Quark because Quark's brother Rom became Grand Nagus the last time we saw him.
That's true.
Yeah.
But and also Quark was Grand Nagus at one point.
Right.
Briefly, true, yeah.
I just love that Quark has finally made it big. He has this, what we would call perhaps a multinational franchise
right?
of bars and casinos or what have you. I love Quark, the character. I think he's one of the great characters of Star Trek. And Armin Shimmerman is one of the great actors of Star Trek.
Oh, yeah.
And so to see that character make it big gave me great pleasure. And in a way that Quark would like. Because Quark, as he says at one point, I'm a people person. So he gets to make it rich being a people person. Good on you, Quark.
Right. You think he also has a stake in Vic Fontaine's? Because apparently he's got franchises too.
I hope so. Well, of course he does. He's Quark. He would negotiate that.
Of course.
Yeah, that's great. Now, that would be a fun character to run into on Lower Decks. Well, there's so many. Quite frankly, if every other episode we happen to meet one of the old characters, to most people it would get old. To me, I would love it. I want to know what happens to Odo. Anyway, I digress.
Well, it seems like they've got multiple shows that could do that. Picard's another one, for example,
which they've done with 7 of 9, with Echep, with Data in a way,
with Hugh.
With Q now, right? I'm so excited.
Hugh.
Hugh. Yes, Hugh, the former Borg. Hugh, not Q. Yes.
And apparently the Borg Queen.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That was just confirmed.
That's going to be... I wonder which actor they're going to use for the Borg Queen.
Actress. Well, that's been announced as well.
Oh, did they? I just haven't seen that.
I didn't
Or I can't
recognize the
pronounce
actress.
it.
The you know, like Captain Freeman's stuff was basically taken by the trader guy onto like his shuttlecraft. Did you like think that it was good that she got that back, or do you think like it would have been cool to see like the decor of the room being replaced with other items?
I have not changed the decor of this room in the 10 years that I've lived here. I don't intend to. Well, that's not true. I've changed a few rearrangements back there. That wasn't there. That was over there. Never mind.
Yeah, that is pretty fair. These bookcases behind me, like sometimes they get cleaned up so they look less of a mess. But this is basically what we do. It's been like this for 6 years.
There's a
And
nostalgia
also-
to how we organize our personal spaces. And I think that especially for a captain, a position as stress-filled as a captain, that kind of nostalgia would be very important for basic functioning. It's the reason that we always will have Livingston the fish and these kinds of things, or the baseball sitting on Cisco's desk. And I applaud that she put those things back so that she can look back at those, and presumably they reflect successes of her life, and say, okay, I can make it through this challenge because I made it through whatever challenge got me that damn bronze pineapple.
Or you reminded me of like the Stargazer in Captain Picard's ready room, which the Stargazer has just been seen on a director's chair of Star Trek Picard filming.
Oh, wow. Excellent.
Just been revealed.
Again, these references. That's good.
Yeah.
It's further proof that the people who are making Star Trek today are fans first and extremely talented creators second. And I think that's what Star Trek needs.
What did you think about like the captain like basically lying to the admiral or like covering up what had actually happened?
We've all lied to our spouses.
Thank you for saying that, because I was afraid to.
I mean, mine knows I've lied to her. It's not that important. But yeah, I mean, especially something on that scale, she's definitely not going to want to tell her husband that she got taken in by a con artist.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh, are they still married? I thought they were divorced or something.
Honestly,
do.
I have no idea.
I assumed they were married, but retained different. No, they're both. They have the same last name, isn't he? Admiral Freeman also.
Oh,
Yeah, but
yeah.
So
Yeah.
how did Mariner get her last name? I guess is another question.
Well, I mean, technically,
Well.
it's a reference to seafaring, but yeah.
Right.
well, no, well, there's two other references. According, yeah, I've heard like Mike McCann is a member of his family with that name. That's one, and also, like I noticed that in the very first episode, I noticed that this when the first episode of Lower Decks came out, that in the very first shot you see of Mariner. Well, no, this is not the part that I noticed, but in the very first shot, this was actually revealed by author Dayton Ward. That I noticed. In the very first shot, you see a Mariner in the corner of the room. There is the Nomad space probe from the original series episode, The Changeling, and in the production of that episode, Nomad was originally called Mariner.
Really?
That was what I found out. Yeah, going back to the script.
Love it. I love it.
Yeah.
Which is appropriate. It's like the rhyme of the ancient mariner for nomad, being out and about for as long, and then
Yep.
returning home. You know, a wiser and what's the phrase? A wiser and a stranger man? No, sober? No, I don't know.
I don't know. Was that the
Do you
Coleridge
have, like-
poem or the Iron Maiden song?
Yeah, that's the colorish. At least that's what I'm thinking.
Do you have like general thoughts about how this episode ended and like the Ferengi, like caring for the Mugatos anything more than you've spoken about?
Well, I preferred that because like big game hunting is a touchy issue, and even seeing the lead Ferengi wearing like a Mugato skin most of the time was a little unsettling. But
Yeah.
yeah, but seeing the main conflict of the episode settled through business and diplomacy instead of battling, that was nice. I enjoyed that.
And seeing it resolved by meeting your opponent on their terms. They were businessmen you were dealing with. Talk business to a businessman was really effective. That if we want successful communication, we have to adapt ourselves in order to communicate with others instead of requiring others to communicate with us the way we want.
So, I think that was really cool. For me, it sort of reminded me of the ending of The Devil in the Dark, where there's the miners, and then they basically work for the welfare of the Hortas in that episode. And then I looked up, and both, like the Horta in The Devil in the Dark and the Mugato in A Private Little War were played by the same person, Janis Prohaska. So I thought it was quite cool.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. I did like seeing some of. I've read some Star Trek novels where like a Horta actually came and joined Starfleet and had
cool.
a translator on it and reporter. And McCoy seemed pretty partial.
They were going to include one in How Sharper Than the Serpent's Tooth, and then decided against it, or I can't remember actually if it's in that episode. I think they decided against it. I'm pretty sure. Well, yeah, the final note basically I noted about Mugato, Gumato was, I think it's my favourite episode of Lower Deck Season 2 so far. Do you guys have any final thoughts about either of the two episodes that we've discussed?
I really like that in these episodes we've seen more about the second tier characters also. We've seen more about the Doctor, we've seen more about Shax. And in the first episode, we saw more about Ransom, for better or worse, poor guy. Whereas the first season was all about the Principal Four and the Captain, and that was kind of all that we got an emotional attachment to. But I now feel attached to the second tier characters more. And these last two episodes, sometimes in a macro sense, are focused on it, like with the Doctor and Shax that have major points, but also some of the others that have smaller bits. I feel more attached to more members of the crew through these two episodes and this season in general, and I think that's a good thing for the series to help keep the audience caring about the situation, like we cared about Voyager's people more than any other perhaps. And now with Discovery being lost in the future, as it were, that we care about them as individuals. And I applaud the writers for taking that direction, and I think these two episodes and the season as a whole really reinforce that.
And Scott?
Well, I've said in other places that, as far as the first season went, I honestly believed every episode got better as the season progressed.
Oh, cool.
So, as far as Mugato, Gumato, the whole thing with the trope would have knocked it back for me to around, honestly, Envoys in season 1. It was kind of a lower episode. As far as we'll always have Tom Paris, I definitely enjoyed that one more, and it was nice to see. It's nice to see them mixing up the formula so that you don't have established pairs that are always pairing off all the time. Overall, I think overall the show is progressing well. I mean, yeah, you see more of the secondary characters and actually slightly less of your supposed main characters, how Ransom had this huge role to play in the first episode, and I almost literally forgot about it. And he's had nothing to do for the rest of his last 3, because they're focusing more on the ensigns, really. And I do like to see them grow and develop. The one thing we didn't mention at all was apparently how Tendi's assignment, Mugato Gumato, was also a way that helped her to grow her self-confidence.
Yes.
And that is really nice to see happening because, I mean, she's already working to break out of the stereotype of being an Orion, and she's coming into more of herself as a person. I love it.
Yeah, she was the less multifaceted of the big four characters in season 1, and they've really done a great job with fleshing out her character. I agree.
Oh, absolutely. I'm waiting. I can't wait to see where the rest of the season goes. Yeah.
Cool. I noted down, like at the start of We'll Always Have Tom Paris, that I noted down, like I really didn't care that Tandy and Mariner didn't really care that much that they were teaming up for what seemed like the first time, because I didn't feel like I cared enough about the characters. But I think like by the end of Mugato Gumato, I'm like, yeah, I do care about these characters more. So I think even in the space of like 2 episodes, like, you know, yeah, it's cool how you develop an appreciation for the main characters or secondary characters, as you were saying. Regarding We'll Always Have Tom Paris, yeah, I didn't think like they've been using Keishon in either of the 2 episodes as much as I thought they might, from when he was first introduced. One question that I noted down was like, how many Starfleet Deltas out of 5 would you rate each of the 2 episodes?
I didn't understand the question.
Sorry, what?
Like, how many like Starfleet Arrowheads, or how many out of 5 would you rate? Would you give these episodes on a scale of 1 to 5, and one being the sort of worst and 5 being the best?
4.5 and a 3.
Yeah, I'd say like a 4, and then probably, I don't know, 2 3/4.
I'm so glad someone's taking the fractions even further than I was. I thank you for that.
Thank you very much for coming on the show today. Thanks to our viewers for watching. Yeah, it was great. Scott, you were saying like this is your first time on camera?
Yeah. Right? Well, not on camera. I mean, I have my own channel, but this is the first time I've done a live stream where I'm not commenting.
Ah, right. Well, yeah, thanks very much to both of you for joining today.
Thank you, Dan.
Thanks for watching. To our viewers, please remember to like and subscribe to the video. We'll see you next time. Track you later.